Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for calling this hearing. Mr. Isaacson, if I could just start with you. In March of 2024, you wrote, "The murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime like it's an actual issue." That'd be Laken Riley you were talking about?
Laken Riley was an unusual case.
Yeah, here, let's have a look. Here's Laken Riley.
Yes.
Her murder, her horrific murder at the hands of this illegal migrant who was also unlawfully paroled in the United States. Her death, not an actual issue?
It's a tragedy.
But not an actual issue?
Migrant crime is much less of an issue than U.S. citizen committed crime.
Not an actual issue? Those are your words. Her death, not an actual issue. I just want to get, no, you say.
Of course it's an issue. It's a tragedy.
So what do you mean by your post? It's not an actual issue, meaning we shouldn't be paying attention to it. Senate's wasting its time this week on the Laken Riley acts that would address the circumstances of her murder. What's your advice to us? We just discontinue those proceedings now?
I think the Laken Riley Act could do a lot of harm. It would allow me to say, oh, this person shoplifted, and that would be enough probable cause to get somebody deported.
Interesting. You're here, who invited you to this committee hearing today, Mr. Isaacson?
The minority party.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're here as a spokesman for the minority party. I just want to make sure the record's clear on this. The spokesman for the minority party is advising the Senate that the Laken Riley Act is a bad idea and we ought to stop it. The spokesman for the minority party is saying that Laken Riley's death and migrant crime is not an actual issue. I can't frankly believe that I am hearing these words. You said it's not an actual issue. I read you the quote.
Laken Riley's death was not an actual issue.
You said that the murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime. You put it in quotation marks, square quotes, like it's an actual issue. She's dead because of migrant crime, right? Let's try something else. Here, do you know who this is? Do you know who this young man is?
I do not.
Travis Wolf, 12 years old, from my state, murdered by an illegal migrant who was also, like Jose Ibarra, illegally paroled by the last administration.
Is your expectation that zero migrants?
Let me tell you what my expectation is that those who commit crimes in this country will be appropriately dealt with. Absolutely. And that we should not be allowing migrants who commit crimes into this country, and that, yes, migrant crime that kills people like Travis Wolf, whose death was shocking, whose death is inexplicable, indefensible. I actually do think, yes, I think it's an actual, wait a minute, it's my time, Mr. Isaacson. I actually think, and I want the record to be clear on this, that migrant crime is a real issue. I think the Laken Riley Act is absolutely necessary. In fact, I propose an amendment to the Laken Riley Act that will cover people like Travis Wolf. I think that ICE ought to be required to detain those illegal migrants who commit violent crimes against children, like Travis Wolf. And yes, I happen to think, as a former prosecutor, I happen to think that their violent murders are actual issues. And the fact that you would say otherwise, sit here and advise the Senate that the Laken Riley Act is a bad idea, that the whole thing is not an actual issue, it's all what, made up, I think is outrageous. I think it's absolutely outrageous. And the fact that you were invited here to give this testimony is stunning to me, I have to say. Absolutely stunning to me. Mr. Kuchan, let me just ask you, something else that Mr. Isaacson has said is that the Remain in Mexico policy was a program of death. A program of death. Is that your experience, having seen it implemented? A program of death?
As part of implementing it, my answer would be no. It was quite the opposite. And as I said in my statement, that the deterrent effect for illegal aliens to come that was gained by the migrant protection protocols, Remain in Mexico program, prevented a lot more abuse, child abuse, abuse of women on the journey, and death along the way than any of the crimes that occurred addressed to the people where the people in Remain in Mexico were the victims. So anytime we have illegal immigration going on, we have victimization of that population. It would be my view, and I think the dollars play it out, especially as you've seen since 2019, that the idea that the cartels benefited from the Remain in Mexico program is relatively ludicrous compared to the alternative. And the alternative we've lived with the last 4 years has been the greatest enriching of the most evil, vicious people in the Western Hemisphere in the history of this hemisphere.
Yeah, I wish the Remain in Mexico program had still been in effect. When the killer of Travis Wolf crossed the border and was paroled illegally into the country, he might still be alive today. And if that's not an actual issue, I don't know what is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.